Welcome to What's Left, folks. We're starting this episode, What's Left Old School.
Yeah, in person.
In the beginning, it was Eduardo and Andy in person on a couch, not with a dog, but there's the dog. There's Gema, okay. But this episode is about me and Gema.
Gema and I.
Gema and I. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're teaching the teacher.
That's right.
Thank you.
And not just that, this is not my main language.
All right. Yes, this is about Gema and I. But one thing we left out was an important detail we want to share with you now in the opener. So take it from there, Gema.
All right. So as you guys can see, I have tattoos. And that was one of the things that I always loved to, like, I would always wanted to have a tattoo, but I waited and I postponed getting a tattoo because my mom, kind of telling her, and I knew it was going to be a disappointment. I had this whole speech made
When
out.
was your first tattoo?
My first tattoo was in 2017.
Okay, not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. And my first tattoo was actually my mom. So I got something in commemoration of my mom. It's okay. So it's an Adelita, in the form of a Katrina, and my mom's name is Adela. So I thought it was pretty awesome. I consider my mom a warrior woman. So
she's got a gun here.
She got a rifle
with roses,
ready to go.
Yeah.
The second tattoo that I got was this one. So, and I'm going to flip it to see if you guys can actually take a look at that. That is actually Lipson. If it's not clear by the socialist that the knight is carrying. And I decided, if I had to commemorate Lipson in a way in my body, how would I do it? And I always thought, well, you're a knight, you're a warrior, you're a fighter, and you're a fighter of good cause and of people you love. So got that socialist there. And that was pretty deep into our relationship,
Yeah.
That was, so this was the first tattoo. And I got this one actually the same year, 2017. This was early 2017. This was mid 2017.
Yeah. So it was a really big deal for me. So
yeah,
amazing. So
he still hasn't gotten a tattoo from me. I'm waiting.
That's right. Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. We are online at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find the link to our blog in the episode notes. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on notifications, share your favorite episode, and jot down our information wherever you found this episode. My name is Andy Libson. I'm a teacher and socialist. I'm a teacher in Oakland and a socialist. And we are joined again by recent What's Left, what would you call it?
Collaborator.
Right. Recent What's Left collaborator and person who's kind of joined us since Jessica stepped out, Gema Alberto Sotomayor.
Yes, Eduardo's going to be very disappointed. He only wants Gema Sotomayor on there.
Yes, but I want Alberto Sotomayor because I was present at your wedding. Not only was I present at your wedding, I was officiating your wedding. So let's recognize those marriages. And we're joined here with Gema, and I guess I'll just get straight into this because Eduardo's not going to be here today, and it's just going to be me and Gema. And I told Gema I thought this would provide an opportunity for us to talk about us, because we have a long past together that is just rich in family and in community and politics. In education, and I feel like I personally feel like our audience doesn't appreciate how important you are in my life, and so this is going to be my chance to explain that to people, or at least show that to people, and also show you off to everyone, because I mean it's always fun to have you here on What's Left, and well, it's always fun. Like when Jessica came and visited, the first people she met was you and Brian and Jorge. And it was like started with a bang right off, and everyone was having a great time.
Trial by fire.
Right. So this episode is really going to be a personal one. Personal me, personal Gema. And I feel like this episode is about us.
Yes. And I'm very much looking forward to it. I think I'll give, to your point, some context for the audience to kind of get to know me and how we are a dysfunctional functioning family. And also have the audience get to see a different side of us, or maybe why we say the things we say, or are involved in each other's life, I guess.
Yeah. Um, well, who should start, and where do you want to start?
I say let's start from right in the thick of it, in the middle of it. So I I I was attending Mission High School. I attended Mission High School my junior and senior year, and you were my chemistry teacher in junior, and then my physics teacher in senior year.
Yeah, and what I always get these wrong. Is that class of
Oh
2005,
five,
2006? Is that
oh
what?
five.
Oh 05. Oh, so then I was your teacher in oh 04 and oh 05.
Yes. 03 to oh 04 and then oh 04 to oh 05.
Right, which would have been very early in my career because I started teaching in like 2000. So it was my first 4 or 5 years of teaching.
When I came into Lipson's, when I joined Mission, when I started attending Mission High School, it was probably my most rebellious stage. I had transferred from another high school in another city simply because I didn't like that school. It didn't make sense. My mom said, okay, fine, pick another school. And at the time when I went to Unified School District, Mission High School had all of these academies that I thought were really neat. They had like the Law Academy, the Science Academy, Math Academy. I just thought that was super cool. So that's how I ended up being in Mission High School. But again, this was like my very rebellious year. And I remember you being the teacher that just didn't care. You didn't care. I genuinely, and that's why I was telling you, we're all but numbers to you. Because you didn't care. I feel like you didn't care if we showed up, you didn't care if we paid attention. I mean, as long as we weren't disruptive, as long as you were able to get across what you wanted to, then it was fine. Um, I would cut classes and I would cut classes in your room because you didn't care.
Right.
Um, and you also didn't care that I was such a smart ass. I would what was it? I was asking you to call me Miss Sotomayor because if I was gonna call you Mr. Lipsing out of respect, you owed the same amount of respect back to me. So you also had to address me by Miss Sotomayor, and you refused. I don't know what your problem was. You
Well, I do
refused.
remember you doing that, and you would do it in the middle of class.
I would.
Yeah, and I was like, "No, I'm not gonna do that." Or maybe I tried it every once in a while, but no, it
It never
wasn't
stuck.
gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna go with the I didn't care thing because I think, f first of all, there's some truth in that. Not like
Not like we
I
were
mean, I really was important to me to be a teacher, but I will definitely say that early on, I didn't even think about forming relationships with students. Like I didn't even know that that was part of the job. I'd heard that, oh, you need to form relationships with students, but I would roll my eyes and be like, no, you got to like teach the content, and I I would say, look, if you don't want to pay attention, get the heck out, and I would have that. I really did have that attitude, like, you don't want to be here, then go, and I mean, so I do recognize that, and I didn't really have any close relationships with students. I think maybe there were some students who would come to my room, but I didn't know what that was about, like, and and so I think there's real truth in that. It's not that I didn't care. It's just that I didn't think that I was in a relationship building job. Like I didn't realize this was a job in which almost all of it is about forming a relationship with your students.
you went into the wrong branch. Isn't that the reason why they explain paying you guys so little? It's the difference you make in these children's lives. Uh,
And
so
but at the same time, like I went into education because I felt like I had struggled, through things in middle school and high school, emotional things, and with things that I had a lot of anger about. And so when I stopped doing research, my mom and even people around me were like, "Why don't you go teach at Stanford, or why don't you teach at a high end college? You have that kind of educational pedigree where you could do that." And I just felt no affinity for those sorts of students. I didn't feel like I would be. I felt like I would be in the wrong place. I felt like I needed to be with students where there was more turmoil and more tumult in their lives, because that's what I related to. So I knew I wasn't going to work at anything bigger than a community college, like, and I thought that I would want to work at a high school, and I did. I had my first year at Mission High School was like my test year, just to see if I liked doing it. And because people had told me it was very hard, and I knew I had a friend of mine who would like. He said he cried all the time when he would come home, because it was so hard. And I remember going through my first year, and my first year was hard, but it wasn't like it was hard in a way that I really enjoyed.
It's
So
challenging.
yeah, it was challenging, but it was really and it was exciting to try to put together lessons and see if you can get something to work in the classroom and come up with ideas on things to teach. Um, but I so it's weird for you to say I didn't care, because I was like I did care, but I also know that I didn't even think about forming relationships with my students.
Yeah, and I am also being a little bit dramatic, sorta, kinda, because I do remember one of the things that made me think like, "Oh, you're an okay guy," was, I was so hungry one day, and I don't remember why I didn't have money on me that day. I don't remember what it was, but I remember going into your classroom just randomly and saying, "I'm hungry," and you're like, I got onion bagels back there and mozzarella in the little fridge." Or provolone, it was provolone. You
Yeah,
had provolone in those nasty onion bagels. Who the heck eats onion bagels? And I said, "All right, well, I'm hungry. Let me go get that."
yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool of you. I was like, "Okay." Um, and then you're so one of the reasons why too I was very rebellious, very nonchalant in class was because class came so easy to me.
Mm.
Like I don't ever feel that I was really being challenged in school. I was getting good grades. I didn't have to study. I would pass my tests. It was whatever. And what started impacting me was I stopped doing the work. So it wasn't that I didn't understand the material, it was just that I stopped doing the assignments. I stopped turning in the paper, the essays. Then I started just ditching class. And that's where our relationship kind of came up because first I would just ditch a couple classes and I would just be in your room. Then I started ditching full on days, not even showing up to school. And it was at that time that my home period teacher decided to do an intervention and call my mom and was kind of like, "Hey, what's going on with Hema? We haven't seen her. Is she okay?" And it wasn't even a Hema's failing class. It was a legitimate concern. Like I know it was he was legitimately concerned that I'm such a great student. I'm on top. Why am I not showing up for class? And of course, my mom didn't know at the time that I was ditching school. And it was the stupidest thing. If you guys want to know what I was ditching class for, so we live in San Francisco and Redwood City is about maybe like a 2-hour bus drive. I would catch the bus from the corner of my house and take it all the way to Redwood City. Then I would get on that same bus again and then ride all the way back. And it was just because I liked seeing the change in the scenery. That was it. I wasn't doing anything crazy. It was just I don't even know, I can't explain the real reason why I was ditching school, but I just didn't care. And of course, they do the intervention with you, my homeschool teacher, and I think it was my English teacher. Oh, and my math teacher. It was Mr. Yamamoto too, I think.
Was this
I think it
junior
was
year or
all of you
senior year?
guys.
Was this junior year or senior year?
That was junior year,
Okay, so that's that first year you're in my class.
going into senior year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was the first year now I think about it. Because senior year, I really didn't care. I didn't do anything. I had already pretty much graduated. I just needed to take, I think, 1 year of English, and that was it.
Right.
Everything else I had
Right.
already completed. And I remember being so upset and so betrayed at my homeschool teacher. Until this day, one of my mortal enemies for ratting me out.
What came of that
But
meeting?
it what came of that meeting was my mom was like, "I'm gonna start walking you to school. I'm gonna." It was so stupid, and it wasn't even like I was doing anything bad. It was more of a you're not showing up to class, and I was still passing my classes. It was just where have you been the last 2 weeks?
Right.
And out of everyone in that meeting, everyone was so concerned. You were like, "Oh," like I felt that you were there because you had to be there because you were part of the nucleus of my teachers. But you're like, so, but I will give you credit. Afterwards, I think it was during lunch break because I would go eat lunch in your room. Like I wasn't it was just you in your room and me. and maybe sometimes another student, but it wasn't like we weren't really talking. But afterwards, you did start to ask me. If I'm not mistaken, you approached me. You're like, "So what's really going on?"
Mm, mhm.
And I knew. So so now I in hindsight I kind of retract the statement I made earlier. I didn't really know because I think I do know. When you asked me that, I think I exploded and I vomited and I just told you. I started opening up about everything, the pressures and everything that I was under. And you were very understanding. And I had never had that. I come from this very stereotypical Latin family where everything, no, there's no excuse. Everything has to be the way that it is. You know, y- you saying I feel bad or, I'm sad, I'm depressed, that's not a real thing. Shake it off. And you weren't like that. You were the first person that I had spoken to that was listening to me for who I was. And so little by little, I started opening up. And I think the first time I'm trying to remember, I was working at the time. I know I was working on the weekends, and then you asked me if I could part time at the ISO on
Mm,
Thursday babysitting.
mhm.
And I said yes. And I think you had to talk to my mom because I think my mom didn't believe that I was gonna go because it was at nighttime.
Right.
And so I started to get a little bit more introduced to you. And and I think the next thing was I don't remember if it was we had gone out to dinner with Susie or we had gone to the park first. So Susie was for the audience, Susie was back then your long-term partner.
Yep.
And do you remember which one it was first? Do you remember if it was Susie or the park? I
I
feel
don't
like it might have
remember.
been the park. Like the park
I
would make sense.
Yeah, I feel like we went to the park, the place where you where I took you into the dark.
I will tell the audience.
But
Okay.
I wanna say something first about go back to that
Yeah.
initial, and then we can come back to the crazy, not crazy, but spooky
Great.
park walk. Um, the thing that I remember, um, first off, I was new to intervention meetings like that as a teacher, so I wasn't really sure what role to play. But the other thing I remember is I wasn't concerned because I saw what the work you were doing in my class, and I saw that you were really smart, and that you were smart about, and you were clever, that you were creative, that and you spoke very well, like, and very in a way that really struck me as like, wow, this person has a lot of actually maturity and insight into a lot of areas and a lot of things. And so when people are tripping about like, oh, she's cutting school or skipping school, you got to remember, my junior year, I cut 2 weeks of school, and I was just like, that happens sometimes. People just they get fed up, and they got to do something. And sometimes it is I mean, I later understood it. Sometimes it is a cry for help, actually, and that probably it was a bit of a cry for help in some ways. But in terms of your future, I was like, she's going to be fine. Like, she's got all her shit locked up. I mean, she knows what she's doing. Um, which was partly, I think, true, but also it was my inexperience in really being able to understand those things. But I will say, I do remember going like, she's fine. She's just cutting school. I've done it. Of course, everyone should cut school every once in a while, kind of thing. So that's something I do remember from that meeting.
You didn't care. You and I would get at it about politics too. That was actually I think how it started before it got to the very before I think we had the intervention. You and I had already kind of talked about politics as you were socialist. I was from Nicaragua. And so, I had family that were Sandinistas, but I was pro Somoza, and then you and I would just get at it.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's where that started. But you know, so I am a brown woman. I know I'm very white passing for those that can see us in YouTube, but I am a brown woman. And here's this white man. And I've always had this fear. And again, it's just because I was raised in Central America, part of my living and going back and forth and seeing changes. And you see all these documentaries and all these murder things. And I was always afraid to be in a place that was predominantly white people. I would prefer where the majority of people were people of color, whether they be brown, black, Chinese, just not predominantly white. I felt the safest. That's me. Um, and I remember giving you shit for that all the time. And but you were listening to me. You weren't really pushing me. You weren't giving me a hard time. You weren't chastising me. And I needed at that time, without realizing, I needed a father figure that would listen because my dad wasn't really present. My mom and I were clashing at the most at that time. My brothers, there's a big age gap, and I needed someone to fill that role. I didn't know it then, but that was that cry for help with you, I think. With the fact that you didn't care, quote unquote, to me was like, hmm. And so I said, all right, well, let's hang out with this guy. And I don't remember why we went to the park. I don't remember how that came about. I know that you always liked walking.
Yeah, I think it became so. This was new for me, and you were still in school at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was like, I was a little uncomfortable with like, what am I going to talk with a student about? Like, and so I wanted to go a place I was comfortable, and that happened to be Golden Gate Park at night.
Oh, Golden Gate Park, like, and I think it was 7 or 8, it was definitely dark. There was not this park is huge. There's not a single soul that we walked by. There's barely the post lights, and you would think that, we're gonna stick to the trails where the light is. No, no, no,
No.
no. He wanted to take me to the back places where it's super dark, and the entire time I'm thinking, "This is where I die. This is where I die." It doesn't help that you say, "Oh, this is where I buried my cats." I was like, "Great, I'm gonna I'm gonna be married with cats."
And for people to know, I had 3 cats that I love dearly. Each of them, Titus, Pearl, and Nomad. Each as they passed away. One at 10, one at I think 11, one at 13, and I buried them in Golden Gate Park.
You had only buried Pearl and Nomad. Titus was
Mm,
still alive at this time.
mm,
So, it was weird, but you also have to kinda trust your gut, and something just happened. I think it's one of those things where it's meant to be in a lot of these red flags, and normally you'd be like, "I don't know. I don't really know this guy. There's a big age gap. Even if there wasn't, he's my teacher. Should I be here?" And were they there? Yeah, but it wasn't enough for me to not be able to enjoy the experience. And that's where I realized I had a lot to say. And in our conversations, you helped me understand and deal with a lot of the trauma that I had. And you didn't have to do that. That was not your responsibility. That was not your job. And for me, again, at the moment, I didn't know how much I needed somebody to listen to me, somebody to not judge me, somebody to take what I was saying seriously at face value. And I started telling you about my previous, my sexual abuse, about the pressures of my family, and just you were so open. You were, it wasn't like, it wasn't that you tried to tell me, "Oh, are you sure? Maybe it was this, or your family wants the best for you." It wasn't that at all. You really just listened, and that's what I needed. I just needed someone to listen. And so you became like my huge comfort. You became that father figure. Well, at that time, a mentor. You were that mentor, that somebody that I could trust. You didn't go and call my mom. You didn't go and call CPS or tell people, "Oh, this girl might need to get checked out," or you might. And to this day, I'm very thankful and I love you for it. I think that's where my love started because I had never had that. I had never had that type of relationship with a man, let alone a white guy, you know? So things just changed for me. And I think that I started to rely more on you. Mhm.
and as I look back on that, the thing, I mean, I feel like sometimes to a fault, I've always been a good listener, and sometimes I've listened too much and not spoken and shared enough, right? I think about my past in this relation in that regard. And probably when you met me here, I was still a person who was more listening than was going to share, which you can't have a relationship if you're only going to listen. And um, but and so there was a part of my own makeup that was almost crafted to say, well, the student wants to share, then I'm going to listen. But I think what was, and I do feel like you're the first student who opened me up to this, because I'm trying to remember. I had not started counseling at that point,
No.
and um, I was very interested in what you were talking about, like in talking about trauma as a young high school student, talking about all sorts of like emotional difficulties, because in many ways I had constructed myself to just hide most of that from myself, and I feel like I was being reintroduced to my own challenges, my own difficulties, by a young person who was right there experiencing it. Whereas I feel like I had piled on layers of concrete to just hide myself from that. And so I think I wasn't just listening. I feel like I was taking notes, and being like, and and watching how you were feeling about that, and being like, yeah, that if that happened to me, I would feel that way too, you know. And that's probably why I was able to say, uh, to not to affirm what you were doing, because everything seemed like it was like I was almost discovering myself and listening to you.
That's what I needed. I didn't know that's what I needed at the time, but that's definitely what I needed, and I guess that's what you needed too.
And I want to be clear, I did not know that at the time. Like everything,
Same.
I was just like, oh, this is interesting. I probably was a little nervous, and like, but I followed my heart. I mean, I followed something. It
Your
wasn't.
instinct.
You're not following the rule books.
No.
Older white man taking. That is not.
No.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Can
uh,
I can I interject before you continue? He had a serial killer van. You had these, like the, "Oh, hey, you want candy?" Um, Big man greed. Just yeah, I don't know, man.
it's it's amazing you survived and I wasn't thrown in jail.
Go figure. It was meant to be. Sorry, but
um,
go ahead.
so is that junior or senior year? What we're
That was junior year. All of this was happening junior
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. Hmm.
Senior year for me was so much fun. So much fun. But this was junior year, and this was actually, I think, the second part of junior year going into, yeah, it was the second part of junior year because it was warm enough that we could go to the park at night.
Mm-hmm.
So it was,
We did that a few times.
we did.
Yeah.
So the first one was the panhandle.
Mhm.
And that's the first time that I opened up about sexual abuse. So it wasn't Golden Gate the first time we hung out. It was the Panhandle, that park,
Yeah.
which is close to Golden Gate
Mhm.
actually. And
It's the
then
handle that attaches to Golden Gate. Yeah.
yeah, and then the second time was at Golden Gate Park that we walked a little bit more, and that's when I found out about the cats. And I think that yeah, so the third time would have been with Susie because at that point I had opened up, and I think that you were kind of like, okay. And so you had asked me if I'd want to go meet Susie, and that was the first time that I saw you dressed as a normal person. Um, your fashion sense is horrible.
Because I was wearing pajamas at that time.
You would wear pajamas to school, like you would wear
Pajama
pajamas.
pants with a shirt
Yes, a
and a
fanny
fanny
pack.
pack.
Yes, and these terrible shoes with holes and never matched socks. Terrible. You were a cry for help. And when you picked me up to go, we went to a Pakistani restaurant.
Mhm.
That was the first time that I had Pakistani food. You were dressed in these biker shorts with a t-shirt, and you just look, and you didn't have a fanny pack, or did you? No, you had a wallet. You had a wallet.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a whole other trip. And Susie was there.
I don't remember that
I
part.
remember it was striped black and gray biker shorts.
That's crazy. This
Skater,
you're bringing
skater, not biker, skater shorts. That's what I mean, skater
right,
shorts.
right. Oh my gosh. Um, and so where do things go from there?
after that, you helped me, you did reference letters
Yeah.
for college, and I think you reviewed my essay
Mhm.
to get in, and you and I just kinda kept in contact during college because I was pursuing biochemistry at the time. And so we would do a lot of lab work, and I remember kinda calling you. My dad and my biological father at that time, he was trying to figure out the best way to separate metals. And I don't remember what metals he was working with, but he was trying to find a way to separate metals. And I remember calling you and kinda saying, "Hey, my dad," and so you were kinda giving me some, "Well, you kinda have to do these things or these." So that was another path, but I got back in contact with you because we broke contact. You served your purpose at that time, Libsyn,
Mhm.
okay? Which was, hear me, I need to say these things. And then I reached out for you specifically for education. It was, "Hey, what do you think about this?" It was about biochemistry, it was about my lab work, it was about my homework. And then I would come into the city because I worked in the city on the weekends, and every now and then we would hang out, but it was super casual. I don't actually think that we continued where we had left off. It wasn't until I had the sexual assault in college.
Right. And but I had already visited. Didn't I visit you once in Stanislaus
You did,
before that event or after that event?
before that event. That event happened my 3rd year of college, which is when I stopped attending.
Right.
Um, so again, you were still in my life, like, we would hang out, but we weren't really. I think at that time you had already broken up with Susie.
Mhm.
And actually, that's where I think our problem started. Um, when I left to college and I came back, we went to Taco Bell. You took me to the Taco Bell that was by, where Guerrero and Market, or I think
Yeah.
Valencia and
Mhm.
Market intersect. I don't know if there still is a Taco Bell there.
Mhm.
And I remember asking you questions and you not wanting to open up, you not wanting to tell me anything. And that's when I started pushing back and saying, "It's not gonna work. This is not gonna work. You have to talk to me. You have to tell me what's going on with you. It can't just be me, 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 me." To which you responded, do you remember?
Yeah. Like it is going to be you, because I don't think it's I like I'm an adult. You're a child, and I've had my own experiences of adults putting their issues on me, and I am not interested in any way of doing that. And like, so you are going to have to fight hard to have me say, "Oh, Hema, I'm dealing with this problem. I want to open up to you." It's like, no. If I was friends with Susie, I would talk to Susie. Or if I had a friend who's an adult, I'll talk to them. But this is a one-way street. You know, you share with me, but I don't share to you. And now there, there's also personal reasons for that because I had reluctance, but
Yeah,
there were also like,
boundaries.
yeah, yeah, like, well, like, no, because I struggled to share with anyone at that point in time in my life. Like I had a lot of work to do. But
Yeah.
but this relationship was very important for me to do right, and for me to do it right, it meant it was a one-way street. Because I did not want to repeat things that I felt like had not helped me. And you would say, well, that's not going to work, and I'm like, well, that's how it is, because I don't want to do that thing, and I don't think it's appropriate, and I think you know it's not right for adults to put those things. I'll find another person my age to talk with about that.
And I'm stubborn. I knew that I wanted you in my life. I knew that you were important to me, and I just knew that wasn't gonna last. It just couldn't be, because one, I wanted to hang out with you, and I I was hoping and knowing that my life wasn't always going to have a crisis that merited you and I talking about that. So we had to come up with other things to talk about. And you and I had great political conversations. That was another way, that was actually the stepping stone into me feeling comfortable and kind of telling you what was going on. Was you and I had gone back and forth on a lot of the political aspect. Although you refused to vote for me if I ran for president, you said
No,
no.
no,
My arch nemesis said yes.
really.
He said yes.
Well, he'd vote for Biden.
Oh, he probably did. I don't know. But you had said no, and I remember being so just, um, what is it? Not appalled, offended. I was so offended. Um, but
And
that's
just to be
where
clear, she was running on a straight dictatorship ticket.
still am.
I will decide for you what should be done.
I know what's best for you.
Right, exactly.
Oh, poor Jorge. Um, so that's kind of where it was, right? We were in college. I was in college, and that was the first kind of conversation. I remember coming out very bummed, but I'm like, no, this is not. This was gonna change. Like I just knew this was gonna change. So I went through college, and I think at that time you were separating from Susie, which caused you to go to therapy or start
Yeah.
therapy.
Yep.
And that was just perfect coincidence because I was transitioning over to being a young adult where you there was I don't think there was that issue of, well, she's my student, she's really young, while you were working on yourself. And so I think that laid the perfect foundation for us to be able to our relationship to be able to move to the next step. And then I had my crises during the sexual assault in college, and you were the first person I called. um and I remember you asking me, was I okay to drive if you needed to come get me? Cause and I said, no, I'll drive. You asked me if I had a place to go. I said, yes, I'm gonna go to my to a friend of mine's who ended up then becoming my partner. Um, and you were just you were very comforting again. It took me back to the first time I opened up to you in the park, which was, I can talk to you about these things. I felt safe with you. And I was once again in a vulnerable state. And I moved back. I think that was towards the end of the school year. That was towards the end of the school year. And so I ended up going back to San Francisco, and I was seeing you more and kind of just telling you, I'm done with college. This is just too much. My dad had just passed away. I had broken up with my then boyfriend. I had been with him for like 4 years, I think, at the time. So my life was just turned upside down. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And you were there. And it just again cemented the fact that I knew you were gonna be in my life for a really long time, and I knew I could trust you, and I always felt very safe with you. And again, it's not something that I've felt with men. Have always been, not that men are the enemy, but I have never been the safest around men. I've had multiple bad experience from people that I trusted, and you would think that that would set me up like, this is a stranger. You think you can trust him. He's gonna inadvertently cross the line at one point. I never had those doubts with you. I always felt safe with you. And yeah, at that point, I think that's when I started calling you, like telling you that you were like my father figure. I remember one Father's Day I called to congratulate you. I was like, Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, and um, it is because I think at around this time is also when Jennifer was coming into my life, a second student essentially, who I think was asking more than you were of me. And as this one came in, I was a little more aware of what was going on. Like in many ways, it was like concrete had to be cracked through, and you're the one who had to take the jackhammer, and then the concrete
The
was
little hole.
softened.
Yeah.
And I think the that kind of father daughter dynamic that I was not it's not just a question of comfortable with. I wasn't quite comfortable with it. I didn't even think like it just didn't even come into my mind that that's a possibility, because I'm not your dad.
Yeah.
Um, and that then I think I started to realize, well, I'm not her father, but I wouldn't mind having a daughter like this. Like this would be kind of cool to have this. It'd be kind of cool to have him as my daughter. You know, but I struggled to say that. I struggled to say that to you. I struggled to acknowledge that for myself because I was afraid. I think I was afraid of being hurt, and just I had not had a good relationship with my own dad, so I'm not a big fan of dads, and
Yeah.
so it was this was going to be, there was so many difficulties you were going to be running up against, you know, to have this relationship form. Um, but to this day, I don't know what to call myself in relationship to you other than I love you, and I would say she is my daughter. I guess I would say she's like my daughter.
That's what I say. I was like, "That's my father figure right there."
Right. Um, and then whether people understand that or not, who knows? You know, it's, I mean, that's also kind of why I wanted to have this episode with you, just because I'd like it to be more public, you know, that, like, what a past we
Yeah, I don't know what type of person I yeah, I really don't know. For me, what life would have looked like there because you you were a lifeline when I didn't know I needed one, and when I knew I needed one, you were definitely that lifeboat. And I can say now that I am as self-aware and I act with purpose and I speak with purpose and I think with purpose because you allowed me that space to better understand me. It's not that you it's again, it's not that you told me, "Oh, this is what's going on with you. You should be doing this." Although you did push a lot for therapy and I just refused it.
had. And you were consistent on that. It
I
wasn't like
was.
you changed your tune.
No. But I told you, I feel like you are my therapy, which I understand your hesitation because you were going through therapy and you knew having somebody else, somebody external point out things and that you did have a bias when you but it didn't matter because as much as you thought that you had a bias and you probably did, you never voiced that bias. And I didn't need someone to help me necessarily understand what I was saying. I just needed someone to listen and allow me to work through it. And that's exactly what you did. You allowed me to say it. It's out there. I heard it. I'm taking it back, breaking it down. What did I say? How did I hear it? What's true? What's not true? Digest it and put it back out there. So I am the woman that I am now because you allowed me that space. I am as confident. I am as certain. I am as driven and stubborn because I trust myself because you allowed that fertile ground to be able to become this woman. I could not imagine my life without you. And even though you and I are not on the same ground when it comes to a lot of like, we have similar values. I don't want the audience to get it wrong. We have very, very similar values. However, maybe our way of tackling those values or addressing the issues that arise through those values are different. But there is a lot of love, there is a lot of understanding, and there's a lot of mutual respect.
Yeah.
And while I see you as a father figure, and I know that I see you as a father figure because I do feel safe and protected around you. But I don't feel you as a I don't see you as a father figure when it comes to politics or decisions. At that point, I do feel like we're equal. That we can sit here and talk about it, and it's not a condescending matter of I know more than you need to listen to me. You're just coming from a naive, young point of mind. It's not. So you feed all of the needs that I have as a mentor, as a peer, as a father, and it's something that I could not replicate or ask. And while I think it's amazing and I genuinely believe people should have somebody like that, I also understand how fortunate and lucky I am that I have that because it's not common. That's the jackpot. That's the $1.7 billion Powerball. Um,
Yeah. Well, I hope I can put it the same. You said the person who I didn't know I needed. Can you say it again? Because, like,
I said it and it's not coming back. I said it
yeah.
from the heart.
But
I don't know what the heck I
all
said.
I'll say is whatever that was in terms of the person I needed, but I didn't know I needed them, and then they were the person who I needed when I did know.
Mhm.
I feel I actually feel the same way, Emma. You know, like, um, I know I feel good about how I helped. I do. I do. I'm proud of that, and I'm glad. I love you. I like it. I'm glad it led to good things for you. But as I look back on it, we were really we were both we were both finding something that we really needed, and you know, um, and something else interesting to me is when I think about your relationship. I mean, I'm kind of bouncing around, but when I think about as you started into this relationship with Jorge, I felt I did intervene more heavily. Like, do you know? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
And I do feel like I started to honestly, I did start to feel like that was the beginning of me a little bit owning, if you want, me owning a bit of a father thing going on here. Like, don't fuck this up.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
um, because I didn't bring that kind of vibe before. I wouldn't have brought that vibe even if it just wasn't who I was capable of being. But as I became a more interventionist person, as I became actually more involved in people's lives and letting them be more involved in my life, it did change the way I started to like talk with you. Because I definitely know I talk with you different as you started things with Jorge than in other previous things where I was. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about because that was you saying him, stop bullshitting yourself. Like that's not what's going on. You need to tell him or you need to work, and it is, which is why it was so important. Like there was no hesitation either from Jorge or me when we were like, okay, we're going to get married. Who's going to marry us? It was going to be you. It was always going to be you. You were very important to me from the foundation and allowing me to become the person and woman that I am now. You were the one that pushed me and challenged me to be honest with myself and be honest with Jorge about what was going on and setting expectations and being clear about those expectations and not feeling bad about it and holding them to the fire if they didn't meet that expectation, right? And then for Jorge, it was at your wedding
Right.
that, he fell in love. So it's kind of
Meaning that when me and Brandy got married, we have a guest list, and Hema was top on the guest list, obviously, and you were played a big part in our wedding. You organized our what's that the dinner before the
the
wedding,
rehearsal
rehearsal
dinner.
dinner, and did an amazing job. But there was a question because she had a new guy, and we were like, is she coming by herself or is she coming with this guy? And I felt, I can't remember what Brandy thought. I think both of us were. I just thought this. I said, I want you to invite him if you're serious. If
That's
you're
the
not
same thing
serious,
Brandy said.
yes. If you're not serious, don't invite him because I want you there and I want Hema present, but I don't want some Joe Schmo, that is like fly by night guy. And so that was the question we asked of you. And I think you were able to create an honest answer of like, no, he's serious and I want him there. And that's, and he, of course, he went to a great wedding, but he got to see Hema in all her glory with your dress and the speech you made. And I mean, you gave an amazing speech at our wedding. And you just, I think that's when he realized, oh, this is the person I should be married to.
Yeah. It's interesting. We should call him in just to give his take. um, no, in all honesty, I understand the hesitation because when you first told me you were getting married and we were going through the plus one, I said, no, it's just gonna be me. I was seeing some other folks at that time. Like I was kind of dating around. Um, but then it just coincided with as the wedding date approached, because I think I might have told you maybe like 2 months before, because it was right before you have to give the final count to the vendors of how many people are gonna be there, because originally I said, "No, I'm not taking anyone." But he and I just started spending more time, and we started growing more, and then you and I started talking more about him, and that's when I was like, "Okay, I wanna bring him," and then, yeah, you and Brandy. I know Brandy was very adamant, like, "Who is this guy? What is Emma thinking?"
Yes. I was more of a believer that this was potentially like this was leading towards marriage. Brandy was like, "What the fuck is she doing?
Yeah.
Like, stop! What are you doing? Like, this is total rebound."
Yes. And in all honesty, like, I could see that because I had a couple I was rebounding. Um, yeah, but, Jorge's a great guy. He's an amazing guy, and I wouldn't have seen that again if it wasn't for you, because I was so used to, in previous relationships, to give, not really expect, not really, and not it's expect, because you expect. We always expect. We always want, but demand, you know? I didn't do that. And you were the one like, "Emma, what are you doing? You gotta do this. If you're gonna do it, you gotta be honest, expect." And I was so pleasantly surprised when I was like, I guess, putting these little tests for him,
Yes. Yeah.
and he was coming through. He was passing them with flying colors.
Hmm. And the difference was that you had the test before, but you would almost set people up, like by
Yeah,
not giving the information. And what you were telling me, and this is the reason I believed in the relationship, was I didn't hadn't met Jorge, but we would go on our walks in a different park. I thought it was mostly McLaren Park that we were doing.
McLaren Park. Mhm.
Um, and uh, and I I recognized those fears you were bringing up. And the thing was, is I was like, are you going to do this again? Are you going to respond in the same old way to these fears? Maybe this time, tell the person your fears. Tell the person what you want. You kept on waiting to see what he was going to do before to assess whether the relationship can go forward. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you can be the pacemaker, not in the demanding way you would kind of been like in controlling, but leading emotionally instead of by leading in terms of like do this and do that. And if you do that, like if they did do that in some ways, it wasn't going to work. And if they don't do that, it wasn't going to work because it was all just about, you know, it was more you directing your partner as opposed to sharing with your partner, and then being vulnerable to them, and then seeing whether or not it came back your way. But I'm sorry, you did it
Oh,
so like I saw the difference. I saw you were willing to do those things. We would have the talk, and then you would say, "I think I know what I got to do," and then we would meet again, like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and you'd have done it.
yeah.
Each time you'd have done that thing, and you'd tell me, and I'm like, so I felt differently than Brandy did. I would report back to Brandy, but
She
she was
wasn't
still like
believing it.
she wasn't buying it. But she was an important check for me because I was like, because you can fool me into anything. Honestly, you can convince me of anything about yourself.
I could, but you would deep down know inside what it was. Like, I think you know me a lot more, or you know me better than you think you do. Go
Okay,
ahead.
but sometimes I feel like you're just able to like snow me on anything because I do have an immense amount of respect for you, of your insight of yourself. Um, so, but Brandy had doubts, but I would counter Brandy's doubts. I was becoming a believer.
We proved Brandy wrong.
Yeah. And then I can't remember when she made that transformation to like being like, oh yeah, here it goes. But I don't know when that was, but
I don't know either. It'd be interesting to get Brandy's point of view on that.
yeah.
But no, it's funny when we try and summarize it for just and put it on record, kind of like the evolution of our relationship and where we started and kind of like the impact. But there's just so much. There's so much and so many different dynamics and growth and stages. And you know, I I love you. I love Brandy, and I remember, what was it? I think the first time I told you was I loved Brandy before I even got to love Brandy because of association.
Mm.
You know, I I saw what was happening with you, and when I met her and I got to talk to her and she really was, like your counterpart. She's so sweet, but she would also push back. She had a punch. And I love that about her. Like, I love that about her. And I meant every word that I said during your wedding and during the speech. And I stick by it. I think all of these episodes and all of these fights and all of these years in the ISO and everything, looking for a revolution. And the revolution was Brandy all along.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you remember, I hope, I don't know if you remember, but I remember we having a conversation. You were living at Shotwell and we were having it on the couch. And I was telling you that you were wasting your time, that you were never going to have this revolution, that my fear was that you were going to end up alone, to just forget the shit and to find somebody to be with. And that, I can't remember. I can't, I can't remember why I said that, but I remember feeling very strongly that you were going to end up alone,
Mhm.
that you were going to die on this revolutionary hill trying to make a difference. And that's why when I met Brandy and I got to know her, I was like, yeah, this is it.
Well,
Um,
I think the reason you thought I was going to do it is because you thought you were like, oh, this person's pretty committed to this. So they're willing to sacrifice. They're gonna like a person who's gonna get tortured and then killed in prison for their cause. Like you're just okay. He seems like he's committed to this, so this is where it's gonna. I think it's gonna lead him. It's gonna lead him to loneliness and to just never really, think falling in love with a cause, but never really committing to a person. Um, and I think that could have happened. I think that could have happened if I mean, let me, if not for Mitch, if not for Brian, if not for Hema, if not for Jennifer, if not for counseling, um, all those things could happen, you know. But people come into your life and they insist on some things, and they start to shape you. And I agree with you that Brandy is my revolution because we have we have both transformed each other, right? Like the road that Brandy's on now. When I want to interview her for what's left because she has
we're going
had
to make it happen, folks.
right? Yeah. Because she has also been transformed, you know. But as much transformation has taken place with her, that same amount has happened with me, you know. And we are both down for the cause, but we're now living different lives. We're not. Well, I know for me, I'm approaching it differently than I did when you first got to know me, and it was more like I don't want to call it standard. It was just straight ahead political guy, you know, but not. But what are you doing this for? Like, do you love? You know, because I question politics without love. Like actually, I would say no. I question this cause without love.
And
Because I don't think you can commit yourself to it without it.
no, and that's the flip of us, right? Because you were down for the cause. I wasn't down for the cause. I was down for the love. Like I was down for no, I'm gonna have a family, I'm gonna have
Yeah,
children, I'm
yeah.
gonna like I had a calendar and I had everything mapped out and exactly how my life was going to be. You were focused on revolution over there. And then it turned out to be the opposite, right? Because revolution comes knocking on my door. Well, not revolution, but
Yeah, no
unrest
progress.
comes knocking on my door, and love comes knocking on your door. My plan comes knocking on your door, except for the babies.
Yeah,
And we both jumped on it. So, and that's the best. I think if I had to summarize why we're still so connected and why we are so involved, and it really is. I do think we are two kindred souls, different eras, different ages, but our values are the same. Our hopes are really down the same. We both are, open to growing and to sharing and to expanding, and we're committed to each other. I keep a very, very tight circle. Very, very tight. I am a terrible friend
no, mm,
from the perspective of I don't call.
mm,
I'm terrible at answering text messages. I'm terrible at answering calls, but I am ride or die. I am that person that if shit hits the fan, you can count on me. I will be there. I will help you get
yep,
rid of the body.
yep. I
And
mean,
I know
you are like, oh, I've got a plane flight. We got to wake up at 3 a.m. You're gonna have to drive 45 minutes. Pick me up at 3 a.m. Da 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 da. That's what's gonna have to happen. You're like, okay, I guess that's what has to happen.
that's what we're doing. There is no favor. There is no anything too big or too small. it's this is what you do for people you love. This is what you're committed to. And so that takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of effort. Your relationship with me was a lot of work. Our relationship took a lot of work. It took us opening up with each other, us analyzing, you going through counseling, me hitting my face against the wall and coming back. And it hasn't been all peaches and cream. You and I have had differences. I don't think that we've ever gotten into a big fight, but I do. You have yelled at me once. But I'll tell the audience in, like, in a bonus episode why you yelled at me. It's the stupidest thing. Um, but it takes work. It takes commitment, and that kind of work and commitment, you cannot spread it and give it to everyone. And so I've always been very much of, these are the people I want in my life. I am going to give everything from you, but I'm going to expect everything from you too. And it's easy for me to cut people out of my life. If you're not up to par, I'm not going to hate you, but I will cut you off. And you've never been on that chopping block. Like, you've never even been a contender to be cut out. Even when I was going through and just eliminating people from my life, you were never one of them. And, you know, like, all I can say is, this is why I know that when the end of the line comes, you will be there, I will be there, by extension, Brandy will be there, Jorge will be there, Brian will be there. And again, that is why I feel so close to my circle. You allowed for me to feel comfortable in trusting men again, in building relationships with adults and people that aren't necessarily from my culture or don't necessarily think or act like me. And it opened up my entire view of what to expect of people, what to ask of them, what to give back. And
And
that's over
one
here.
one question I'd have is, when did we make the transformation? When did I make the transformation of being somebody who was one way to two way?
It was during your counseling with Susie. It was when things were ending with Susie, because I don't know what it was at that point. Um, so Rod, because you were going through changes too, because I think Roger and Rachel, who were moving to Australia and were doing their own thing.
Yes.
No, you know what I think it is? I think it was the middle of counseling, which was started by Susie, but I think it was because it forced you to look at your parent-child relationship, and you and I had a parent-child relationship.
Yeah.
And you started opening up about some of the things that you were talking about in counseling, not everything. There were things that I know you still kept to yourself, but that's where it was. That's how it started. It started around there.
Mm. Yeah. Because I definitely remember. I remember saying I'm not going to do this, and I don't remember when I made the change.
It was then, because your mom came to San Francisco and I met your mom.
Mm, mm,
I was living at the the Westlake Apartments at that time, and I remember she came over for dinner, and she was so sweet.
mm.
So, so, so sweet, your mom. And it was around that time. I don't know exactly what the first communications were, but I know that it was around counseling.
Yeah. Mm. Well, I
And I was like, "Ah, my evil plot worked all along.
yes, like I'm fuck no, I'm not going to counseling, but you get
You
yourself
need it."
in.
Well, no, it happened with counseling, because I always thought family was so big and family was so important to me, and I was telling you, I make sacrifices around my family. There's things that I put up with and things that I'm willing to look aside because family is so important, and you have to do everything in your power to keep family, where that be looking at an abuser in the eye, or just for the right of family. Whereas you are more like, no. I was like, "You have to." And because you were working through family at that time, that's how it started.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not sure where. All I would say is I'm really grateful for how close I am with my mom and my brother, to my biological family now. I do think counseling has a role to play that. I feel like my relationship with you and my relationship with Jennifer, definitely my relationship with Brandy, has a role to play in that. But I'm also grateful for the this family, like me, you, Jennifer, Brandy. Brian, like, um, I did not realize I could have. My family has always been kind of tight. We didn't really necessarily go always see grandparents and cousins and things like this, but I did not realize how much security one could get from having that broader network of people who are committed to you and are so solid. Like, I'm proud of the fact that I'm also a 3 a.m. drive you to the airport person. I'm proud of that. Um, but goddamn, you are totally that person. And Brian's a kind of guy. And it's just amazing to find your equal and find your match in those sorts of things. A person who will give as much as you give, and won't hesitate. And it's not going to be like they're not going to be calling in a mark or something like that. And it's a great feeling. I know that it also meant that we asked you to do some things for the wedding, that you and I worked on the newspaper, that brilliant thing, and you were so frustrated at me. Rightly so, because I was micromanaging. And
And
that
it came out
it
great.
came out great. It was brilliant. The Rogue's Vogue, and with articles in it about our meeting Brandy and set in a particular time. It was brilliant. So it's not all cheese and crackers being Andy's daughter-like person.
I wouldn't have it any other way though. It wouldn't be boring. So I guess we've had two, but that wasn't a fight. It was just me like, oh my fucking god. But I was like, it's his wedding. It's fine.
I
This is
appreciate it.
what I
And
signed up
also with the
for.
ring. The ring, you also showed
Oh, I was pissed with the
Job
ring though.
Job's patience.
Why was I got so mad with the ring? Because you went solo. I think
Yeah, you had
it
helped
was
me
like
design and everything about the ring, but then when the person that you
was
had
gonna.
kind of picked to do it looks like, oh, we can't do it. I just said, fuck that. I'm gonna go find a person. Da 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 da. And I didn't talk to you about it, and I kind of cut you out in terms of it
I
was
was hurt.
wrong. It was wrong, and I apologize.
Yeah.
And Hema played a huge role in Brandy's ring. Ultimately, then a secondary role in this ring because that matched the colors of that. Oh man, I can't really. It has. I'm not. I'm an asshole sometimes.
But we love you for it.
So, and now, I mean, okay, I'm not putting this part in. Well, I am.
Edit.
We'll see.
Mhm,
I will just say, well, let's figure out what we'll do with this.
mhm.
Um, this is honestly, Emma. It is amazing to have you be part of this what's left thing. Um, I know this was a possibility many years ago, and even then, I was just like, Hema's a fucking. Who knows what she'll say? Let's get her on the show.
It's a
Uh,
wild card.
you know, but I still feel that way. But I have almost come to see what's left for me as a family show. It's a talk about politics, but Eduardo, I mean, he's such a big part of my life, and now we added in Jessica and of course Kenny, and it's so this show has become very personal for me. It's not like, I mean, if we get more subscribers, I don't know. Does YouTube kick us off? Who cares? But to be able to do this with you is really very meaningful to me. It is cement. It's like sealed the show into. It's made it something else for me. Um, Something that it was kind of becoming, but more like, no, this is also part of my family here. And uh, so I was surprised that you decided to just come and join us, but I people have to know that this thing has changed this has changed the show for me now. And I hope you can. I mean, regardless of whether you can stay or not, because I personally think you are loading yourself up with things that may mean you cannot stay here. This is the part that I'm wondering, I can have to edit part. But I want to tell you, whether you stay or go for months or years, I'll be glad every damn episode I have with you. That's what I'll say.
I'm I do this because I love having these conversations with you, and this gives us an opportunity to share time. Right now with you living over there, me living here, and life it's going to be rare that we get, it's not going to be as, hey, come on down, let's just hang out. Like I know that, and I will take it. I will absolutely take this. But to a bigger extent, I've always I've always lamented that most people don't feel comfortable having these kinds of conversations with their loved ones, with their friends, and being comfortable disagreeing. And even if you get mad and you get heated and words are said, understanding that that's all it is. It's just a disagreement on a specific topic. It doesn't change the person you're speaking with. It doesn't change how you feel about them. It shouldn't change the dynamics afterwards. It's more of a, let's agree to disagree kind of thing. And if anything, this should show and this should expand to people. Please be comfortable having these conversations. Please form these types of relationships, because again, there's going to come a time when you're going to need to have them. You're going to need to organize, and you're not going to be successful unless you know who you're organizing with. And just because someone tells you, oh yeah, I'm down for the cost, I can do it, sign me up, you can count on me, does not mean you can. And that's how you get all of these moles and these meanwhile organizations just fucking shit up. And well, I don't think that this episode is going to even come close to your John F. Kennedy episode in viewership. For those that stuck around, and for those that were interested in getting to know Andy and getting to know Gema and how this weird dynamic works, it's don't just be interested in us and our dynamic and our chemistry. Think of how can you apply this? How can you do this with your own people? Have these conversations, get together, be stronger. And you and I had a lot of these types similar political conversations at the beginning, and our relationship wouldn't have evolved to the strong, cemented, no doubt about it, if we hadn't gone through that, if it hadn't started somewhere. Because even if you're apolitical, you're not apolitical. You live in a world. You live in this world. You're a citizen of this community, and you're gonna have you're gonna have opinions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and who knows? Maybe one day you'll have a Lipson in your life, or a Gema, even better.
Oh, if you have a Gema, just prepare for that. Prepare for that.
I am the best roller coaster you've ever gotten on. Shut up.
True. It is true. And Gema does love going on roller coasters. Walt is what is it?
Disney
Studios.
Yeah, Disney. But I'm not hardcore for those big scary ones.
Yeah. No, well, I can't deal with them at all. I think those final words you left are really what our show's about. So I think we'll leave it at that. Well, thanks, Gema.
Thank you, Lipson. Love you.
I love you too. All right, let's do the outro.
Make Eduardo proud. Please do it at half speed.
Exactly. All right, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political broadcast channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and guests on the episode notes wherever you found this episode, or on our blog, what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our 8 platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Bitchute, Odysee, Rumble, YouTube, or Telegram. If you'd like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. All right, well, that's it for Andy and for Gema. Gema, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we look forward to talking with Eduardo next week, hopefully. We'll see everyone next week.
Bye.